So I've been getting a lot of questions lately about my gaming setup, and it's pretty simple. I've got a console section and a PC section. As I'm in the process of rearranging my entire setup, I figured now is as good a time as any to get right into it. Hey guys, it's Rubes here, and today we're going to go over all the stuff in my console setup, including how I got my hands on everything, and in part 2 we'll tackle the PC setup. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, as it really helps me out and it keeps me making more videos for you guys. Make sure to stick around until the end for a hot tip to avoid a big mistake in any gaming setup, as it might just save you a console one day. And as always, you can find most of the items covered linked in the description below. So let's start at the beginning with the console that kicked off my entire gaming journey, the original PlayStation. This thing came out in 1994 and it was my first real console. I may have only been 4 years old at the time, but I had some great older brothers who got me into games like Crash Bandicoot, Tekken, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. They helped show me the ropes and set me up for a lifetime of button mashing. Right here you can see the scars from my childhood rage quits. One day I stabbed the disc cover with a screwdriver during a tantrum, and I honestly can't remember what it was all about. But hey, it still works. This PS1 has survived through a lot. Consoles these days aren't this sturdy. When the PlayStation first came out, the controller only had a D-pad and the classic action buttons. Sony released the first DualShock controller a couple of years later, with joysticks and a rumble function, but I never had one of those. I was rolling with the standard controller, and that thing was a trooper. It lasted for about 2 decades, then I had to replace it. I also used to have a notebook full of cheat codes for my favorite games to unlock things that you now pretty much have to buy in-game. Things like more money, infinite health, different guns, different vehicles, big head modes, you name it, I had it all scribbled down. And as for accessories, there was the standard memory card which you needed to save your progress. There was things like the Game Shark devices, you had steering wheels for racing games, there was even a Namco gun for Time Crisis, which brought the arcade experience right to your living room. Another cool feature that the PS1 had was a CD player. It had a media player with a built-in equalizer, which was a nice touch at the time and kind of made it the first true entertainment system. The original PlayStation will always have a special place in my heart. Even though I've moved on to other consoles and other platforms, nothing beats that nostalgic feeling of seeing those classic PlayStation buttons and remembering the good old days of playing games with my older brothers. Here we've got the PlayStation 2, a total game changer. It wasn't just a gaming console, it was my first DVD player. Back then it was a huge deal. This console didn't just expand my love for gaming, it solidified it, and it took over the whole family room as the entertainment hub. If you've been watching my content for a while, you've probably noticed that I'm a big fan of PS2 games. Need for Speed Underground 2 is a game that I still have and play to this day, and it surprisingly survived all of the house moves from storage box to storage box. Underground 1 and Underground 2 dropped right about the same time as the first 2 Fast and Furious movies, so everyone was dreaming of tricked out street cars at the time. That was the game that made me want to become a mechanic. I even recently picked up what I had lost a long time ago, Underground 1, and added it to my collection. By 16 I was working on cars, and I definitely credit these games for that previous passion. Another classic I cherish is Scarface: The World Is Yours. My brothers and I watched Scarface together so many times, so this game for me just hit differently. If you're into the GTA style games, you need to check this title out. It lets you live the Antonio Montana life like nothing else out there. And like a lot of you, having a heart attack the first time I experienced this, the red screen of death, it freaked me out. But a quick wipe of the game disc usually did the trick. I spent endless hours with cheat codes in games like GTA San Andreas. It was like discovering a secret layer to the game. Now I'm sure everyone already knows about the PS2's expansion bay in the back where you could put a hard drive. But did you know that the hard drive would help reduce load times? That's not something I personally knew, so I never did it. And these days, the modding community has actually taken it way further by being able to load entire game libraries through that thing. At the time of release, this console came with DualShock 2, which felt like a massive upgrade to its predecessor. Over its lifespan, the console had a ton of accessories as well, things like the iToy camera, steering wheels for racing games, there was even arcade-style fight pads for games like Tekken and Street Fighter. It wasn't just a gaming system, it truly was an entertainment system. Alright, let's move on to PlayStation 3. This console marked a big shift for me, both in gaming and let's just say in questionable financial decisions. I actually ended up with 3 of these, and no, not because I needed them, not because I was strapped with cash, but just because I was very irresponsible with my money back then. My first PS3 was one of the originals, unfortunately not the backwards compatible ones, but I was pretty pumped about it. Not only was it a powerhouse gaming console, it played Blu-ray movies too. Blu-ray was brand new at the time, and I remember thinking it was the most futuristic thing ever. I used it as my main entertainment hub, but like a lot of early PS3 owners, I eventually ran into the red light of death and that console was toast. So I replaced it with the PS3 Slim, which found its spot in the living room. But then in peak irresponsibility, I bought a PS3 Super Slim for my bedroom as well. Two PS3s, because why not, right? At the time I was in my early 20s with no real responsibility, and let's just say I wasn't great at saving either. And it's also when I actually started to build a backlog of games, some of which I still haven't played to this day, to be honest. I had a bit of extra cash, and instead of being smart with it, I'd buy games faster than I could finish them. Sadly, most of which was lost during the great house move that caused me to lose a lot of my gaming gear, which I still haven't emotionally recovered from. Anyway, where was I? Back with the PS2, I'd play and replay my favorites, but with the PS3, I was piling up games and moving on before I could even finish them. Another thing that made the PlayStation 3 awesome was the Logitech G25 racing wheel. I had it set up in my bedroom for games like Gran Turismo and Need for Speed. I had the pedals, the shifter, the whole lot. However, I ended up selling it a few years later to fund my PS4. So yeah, the PS3 wasn't just a console, it was a new way to experience gaming, movies, and a growing collection of games. Even though I still regret how irresponsible I was with my finances back then, I can't deny that the PS3 era was a blast. And having 3 consoles may sound ridiculous, but honestly it kind of formed part of my whole gaming journey. Up next we've got the PlayStation 4. This console has been with me through a lot, especially throughout my 20s. As I previously admitted, I was pretty financially irresponsible. I used to rage quit games a lot, and I've broken more controllers than I can count. I've only got these 2 left, the red one and the blue one. These ones are my survivors. For now anyway. My go-to games on the PS4 became all about the open world experience. Titles like Assassin's Creed games, Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The PS4 didn't change what I played, but it took those games to a whole new level. The tech and graphics were such a jump forward that it made everything feel more immersive. Although it was a continuation of my gaming journey, it was still pretty impressive. While it's not a lot, I've got a decent collection of physical games here because for me, there's just something about having the actual discs. I only go digital if I already own a game on another console or if I need a DLC pack. There's just something about building the collection and seeing the game cases all stacked up. Even with the current gen console, I still add more to my PS4 library when I can. With my PS5 out of commission, more on that in just a moment, I've actually been playing PS4 a lot more lately, and even though it's starting to sound like an airplane about to take off, it still holds up great. With countless hours of gaming, I have put this console through a lot over the years. So yeah, the PS4 may have been a continuation, but it is one that I'm still very much enjoying today. Alright, so let's talk about the PlayStation 5, or rather the PS5 that isn't here, thanks to the hot tip that I mentioned earlier. And as an adult, you'd think that this would be common sense, but I had to learn this the hard way. You might have noticed that my IKEA Kallax cubby is right in front of this big window here. Well, back when I had my setup arranged for the second time, I had my TV sitting on top of the cubby, and to the right of it was the PS5. One warm, sunny day, I was in the middle of an intense gaming session, letting a nice breeze in through the window, but being the genius that I am, I didn't realize the sun was hitting the PS5 head on. After a couple of hours, the console got so hot that it shut itself down and it never powered on again. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, I know what you're gonna say, I could have just taken it to get it repaired. And you're right, I could have. But at the time, there was all these rumors swirling about the PS5 Pro dropping for pre-order very soon. So I figured I'd hold off and wait to see what that's gonna be about. And then, not long after, Sony announced the 30th anniversary limited edition consoles. To cut a long story short, I spent a solid 15 minutes battling with EB Games website, and luckily I managed to snag a pre-order for the Slim Digital Edition. That console is going to take me right back to my roots with the PS1 nostalgia, so I'm very excited to get that set up here soon. Of course, as soon as it arrives, I'll be doing a full unboxing and review for you guys. So if you're curious about the 30th anniversary edition, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss that video. Now, I know what you're thinking, what's an Xbox 360 doing here? Well, it's part of my setup, and even though I don't have a lot of personal stories attached to this, I'll give it a lot of credit. This console really helped bring online gaming to the mainstream with Xbox Live and with the achievement system. I guess I keep it here because it's a piece of gaming history. To the right of the cubby, we've got a bit of a mix. There's my original Game Boy Color and my Nintendo Switch. These devices may be worlds apart in tech, but they each hold a solid place in the setup. First up, the Game Boy Color. This little green brick is about as old school as it gets. I've had this thing for years, and it's been through everything with me. Back in the day, it was all about titles like Tetris, Super Mario Land, and Pokemon Red. I like having it out here as a reminder of where handheld gaming started for me. And then we've got the Nintendo Switch, basically the modern evolution of handheld gaming. It's got that same spirit of taking your games anywhere, but with a lot more options. It's got AAA titles, indie games, and everything else in between. It's kind of like how devices like the Stream Deck and MSI Claw bring extra functionality to any gaming setup. The Switch is a powerhouse in its own right. It's portable, versatile, and it has one thing no other competing console has: Mario Kart. It's like having a full console experience that you can carry around. Having both of these side by side shows just how far handheld gaming has come. From the GameBoy Color's pixels to the HD worlds on the Switch, it's cool to see the evolution. And while they might not get as much action in my setup as the consoles in the cubbies, they're an awesome balance. One takes me back to much simpler times, and the other brings it all forward with a new tech. Now all of this gaming glory is sitting on the trusty IKEA Kallax shelving unit with a Govee RGB IC light strip running along the back. Yeah, I know, what are you gonna say? It's a pretty standard piece in every gaming setup, everyone's got one. But you know what? You really can't beat the versatility. I love how the RGB glow shines right through the open cubbies, giving the whole setup a nice pop. And not only does it add to the gaming experience, it is a very cheap way to upgrade any gaming setup. But with the open back design comes a little bit of a downside: cable management. As you can probably tell, I haven't exactly nailed that yet. I just rearranged everything in the setup, so it's definitely a work in progress. Considering the very thin shelves, if any of you have any tips for hiding cables while keeping the RGB effect visible, I'm all ears. And down here is where I keep my game collection. Everything from what I have left anyway, from PS1 games all the way through to PS4, lined up and ready to go. If you want a deep dive into my collection, drop a comment and I'll make a video about it later. To the top left of the cubby, I've got my trusty little plasma flat screen. I've hooked up the PS1 and PS2 here because, I mean, let's be honest, with these older consoles, the graphics actually look way better on a smaller screen, way less blurrier compared to playing on a massive 4K TV. And all around it, I've got my Star Wars Lego display, because it's all about the balance. Gaming on one side, Legos on the other. It's two of my favorite things in one spot. Adding personal items and decorations really make a setup feel more personalized and unique. So I highly recommend that you do the same for your own setups with pieces that you love. And on the wall above the cubby, I've got my Govee neon rope light, which I recently shaped into a game controller. It turned out pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. And over to the right, there's an IKEA pegboard, which is looking pretty sad and empty at the moment, but I am planning to fill it with some gear, maybe a couple of controllers or keyboards, maybe some keyboard switches. But if you guys have any other ideas on what else I could put up there, let me know. And there you have it. That's my console setup. From retro classics to the latest gear, this space has a bit of everything I love about gaming, all in one place. It's a mix of old school memories, new tech, and a bit of cable management nightmare. But hey, it's a work in progress. If you enjoyed the tour, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Don't forget, this is only part one of my setup tour series. We'll be diving into my PC setup next time, where I'll be showing you everything from my budget IKEA desk build to my custom PC. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. And as always, if there are some things that you've seen and liked from my setup, I'll have most of the items linked in the description below. So stay tuned for part 2. I'll catch you in the next episode.